Okay, I'm going to try this again because yesterday the memory ran out mid-rant. And I'm going to try and pick up from what I remember. So, hasn't been a lot of videos lately just because life, busy, kids. Not only that, but there's just times where I really just can't get my thoughts coherent. So the observation that I had yesterday was that the idea of consequence came up, and how we don't have a generation that deals with consequence or has had any kind of experience with being held accountable for their actions. I think that's a very unfair statement, but what I do know is that we have a generation of people, or a society of people, or a group of people, or just a nation, a national understanding, albeit very incorrect, of what war is. We had a global war on terror, but it wasn't a global war on anything really, other than a bunch of yahoos that aren't. You can't really say that they're uneducated, because they're very skilled in the art of war, or in the conduct of war. Obviously. But the point that I was making yesterday, and I don't like referring to what I was talking about yesterday because you weren't party to it, and so this is just me venting my frustrations on the fact that I am technically technologically challenged when it comes to actually remembering how to clear the memory of my phone. Anyway, the point that I was making was that we've never really had to deal with rationing. Okay? Hear me out. In the Second World War, you had ration cards. You had ration for gas. You had rations for meat. You had rations for pretty much any consumable product. And if you've ever played any kind of decent real-time strategy game, and I'm talking like Hearts of Iron, you understand that production isn't really a factor of just pushing out tanks. Production has to be balanced with civilian goods, or what do they call them? Commodities? No, it's not commodities. I can't remember the terminology of consumer goods, I think. Yeah. The stuff that makes life easier, right? On-demand type things, lumber, steel, rubber, gas, those things that, while they are essential to the war effort, they are also essential to the civilian effort, or the civilian lifestyle. So we haven't had to do that since the Second World War. And the story that I've written about a little bit before was that on my last deployment, I was coming back on leave from Iraq. I was coming back from Hawaii, going back to Iraq. And I was going through the atrium I was standing there watching the stuff, because I like people watching. I was watching from the second level of the atrium the group of soldiers that were going, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, whatever. They were being escorted by the USO people. And as I've written before, the only time I've really gotten irritated with being in the service was when I realized that most of the people that were on cell phones and talking and just carrying on, a lot of them were the fact that the USO folks were clapping as they were taking escorting the soldiers to their gate, troops to the gate. And I remember standing there on the second level of the atrium, looking down, going, what gives you the right to be irritated? What gives you the right to be inconvenienced because somebody's clapping as these folks are going to returning to a theater of combat? It was just passing irritation. It's not like, I wanted to rant and rail about it, because what it really boils down to is you're dealing with people who have no idea. They have no idea about the sacrifices the families go through, or the sacrifices that we went through, or anything like that. They were just inconvenienced because the price of gas went up considerably due to market reactions to a conflict in the Middle East. So, we don't know, as a society, anything but the convenience of modern society, right? I want to go to Starbucks, I go to Starbucks. I want to get lumber for a project in the garage, I go to Lowe's, I go to Home Depot, I go to a local lumberyard, hardware store, whatever. Yeah. But what happens when those global supply chains are disrupted because the conflict that we inherited, we're taking on, we voted for, what happens when that conflict starts having a direct impact on our daily lives? We're not going to know what to do with it. We're not going to know what to do about it. We're going to be just flabbergasted because we can't get what we want, and there's going to be a political reaction. And the point that the point that I don't like making is that I really dislike the whole idea of, oh, well, we got a Democrat in office, so it means that we're going to go into another conflict. Well, that's not entirely true, because Bush was a Republican, and Bush was in office when we started the longest war in American history. And again, I have an issue with the idea of calling the Afghanistan-Iraq stuff a war, because it wasn't. It's a global war on terror. Yes, that's what it says on my DD-214. Yes, that's what it says on the ribbons. That's what it says on all the citations and everything. Served in the global war on terror. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Well, but it's not. It wasn't. It was, but it wasn't. We try and assign ideas of what a war is to something that we think it is. And maybe a war on terror, a war on terror really needed to be redefined in terms of conflict. So, I don't know. I mean, I think that we're going to be in for a rude awakening when it comes to what this is going to mean, because honestly, I have no reservations whatsoever with making the assertion that once things kick off in one location, they're going to kick off in another location. Plain and simple. You don't pass up on that wonderful opportunity. And that's the thing, is you have to think like the opponent. You have to think like the people that you're going to potentially fight against. You just have to. If you don't, you're going to lose. If you don't, you're going to get mired into a 20-year conflict. You have to understand what they're capable of, what their intent is, what their conditions for victory might be. You have to. It's an imperative, which we don't do. Trying to get back to my thought here. We don't know what we just don't know what that's going to mean. We don't know what this conflict is going to mean for a lot of things, a lot of people, a lot of reasons. We don't know what it's going to mean for my kids, your kids, our kids. We don't know what it's going to mean for us. This is the problem with not voting responsibly. I mean, and there's no way of knowing. There's no way of knowing how things were going to pan out if 2020 went the other way. There's no way of knowing. And that's the problem with speculative history. You can sit here and go, oh, well, what if? What if Winston Churchill was hit by the cab in New York City in the 1920s or 1930s? What if somebody actually bought Hitler's paintings? What if? You could do whatever. I hate it. It drives me crazy. Because you're just making up intangibles, and you're basically going from the bias of the outcome that you want, or that you expect when you when you strategize, when you theorize, not strategize. I don't know what this means. I don't know what's going to happen. There's no template for history. I do know that this is a result of people who probably weren't punched in the mouth at some point in their lives. Because if you were punched in the mouth, and I'm going to write about that eventually, if you were punched in the mouth, then you know that there's a reaction, there's a consequence for an action, whether it's accurate or not, period. So maybe people needed to be punched in the mouth. Maybe playground equipment needed to be a little bit more dangerous. Maybe. Well, yeah. But this is where we are. And how do we deal with it? I'm driving my daughter to daycare this morning. And she is going to be 4 in a couple of months. I find it fascinating that as we were coming out of the neighborhood, I asked her, which direction are we going to be heading if we turn right? And her response was accurate, south. If we're going south and we turn left, which direction are we heading? We're heading east. This is where we need to be. We need to be focused on the fundamentals for the next generation. We need to be focused on something beyond what other people are telling us we need to be focused on. We need to be focused on doing what's right for the people to our left and right, our friends, our family, our community. I'm still going to speculate about what this conflict is going to mean. I'm still going to speculate about what it's going to look like, because that's kind of what we do. But I will not have any naive optimism that there's not going to be some sort of very, very dire political, social, economic repercussions that people are just not prepared for. So that's it for me. Maybe I'll make it a habit to start doing more videos as I'm in the truck. It's perfect timing. Doesn't make it too long. Forces me to wrap things up fairly quickly. But in the meantime, it just means that I'm going to be viciously optimistic. Bye.